You are into Jackson Snyder Presents and the fourth installment in the series Tracing the Adamic Race to Your Doorstep. Welcome to Jackson Snyder Presents. Indeed, it is a beautiful machine, that is, the finely tuned and incomprehensible multiverse that through an infinite number of contradicting laws, rules, and physics ever expands larger and larger to encompass more and more worlds, yet at the same time enjoins itself with we humans as imminently available to set our own rules and shape our own destiny, while at the same time governs that destiny so that the birth of any one creature cannot sound the death knell of all. Welcome to Jackson Snyder Presents and its presentation of Tracing the Adamic Race to Your Doorstep. Why is it that the mechanisms of the machine behind the ever-expanding multiverse has chosen you to serve it into the eternal future by obsessing you with its beatific vision? And why you? And why not that sibling who could care less about the things of the Creator nor the future of the creation? I hope in this series of obscure lessons from quantum physics, brain chemistry, the infinite expansion unto billions of worlds unknown, that you will better understand the divine mystery of election, choice, and the divine supercosmic mind that chose you above your peers for the certain privilege of serving the multiverse and its great diversity of creatures in that time when past, present, and future will indeed become and be perceived as now. Yes, my friends, it is a beautiful machine. Tov. Boker Tov. It's about 6 in the morning on the Shabbat, and I wanted to get as much of this last installment finished as possible so I could put it up. I did this a little differently last night. I played the introduction to the first 3 installments of this series as a summation of some of the concepts that we have gotten into, and I tried to express that this series was not a smooth road. It's a matter of taking several unrelated concepts and putting them together in order to find, or at least start to find, a new paradigm for spirituality in which the legitimate scientific discoveries of today, at least from an anti-materialistic perspective, could be melded with eternal spiritual theology toward a unified theory of election. That is, that occasionally someone is chosen as a partner to the Messiah Yeshua in the work of the restoration of creation, but not only chosen, but chooses to join Messiah in that work, while at the same time, the vast majority neither choose or are chosen. And how we might not only be foreknown, but predestinated to election, yet at the same time retain free will and exert that free will in the vast regions and variations of the multiverse. So we have put together aspects of quantum physics and the theorized effects of quantum physics discoveries on the whole person or persons that we are. We've added brain dynamics under the new paradigm, that we are flesh beings with no controlling organ in the brain, that our intellectual systems are all independent of each other without a unifying factor or governor, but that governor is found instead residing in space-time within a theorized, nested hierarchy of morphic fields that we can equate with, in theological terms, a glorified body, and how it came to be through the second creation of a man and the dispersion of that man's morphic fields as exemplified in the Enochian animal apocalypse, the whys and wherefores of our personal election and choice to accept it, while perhaps siblings or other close members of our personal society remain entirely uninterested in spiritual or cosmic things. And it's been a rough road, as I said, because we've been dealing with anti-materialistic science as well as anti-materialistic theology. So as I mentioned before, in this final installment, we went back to the introductory passages of each of the other installments in order to summarize the concept of morphic resonance, morphic fields, the 2 creations of man from Genesis 1 and 2, the first men and women manufactured, the second man and woman formed from the dust of the ground and inbreathed with the spirit of life, the dispersion of the progeny of this second Adam, the one formed and inbreathed, and how the genotype or morphic type coming from that first progenitor has popped up in the formation of people over the course of the last 6,000 years, and how that inheritance has impacted their spiritual lives, and why so many are alone, yet today, alone among a cohort of irreligious, sinful, lawless people. What I didn't get into that I wish I did was how the hierarchy of angelic beings, insofar as classic Judeo-Christian religion has defined them, is an old paradigm for a new understanding of spiritual life through morphic resonance, And in this final session, after the summaries, I prepared an exhortation to bring it all together in the hopes of those who are attending, who certainly are among these elect, else they wouldn't be there, to show the responsibility of being chosen and choosing as it relates to our times and the times just ahead of us in this 7th millennium. And I leave it at that, dear listener, as we now proceed to the exhortation to end this series, at least for the time being, until we can determine the bridges between each of these topics and their correspondence to true reality in a multi-dimensional existence. May Yahweh Elohim be praised through his perfect Son, our Savior, Yahshua ben Yosef ben Yahweh. Since genetics does not have the capability of forming a person, genes turn on and off proteins. Like, for instance, if you find yourself with Alzheimer's disease, then what's happened to you is a gene has turned on to make amyloid protein and shoot it into your brain. It makes so much amyloid that it withers your brain cells. Genetics does not account for the form. You've got a leg, you've got an arm, as he would say.
The he that Brother Snyder is referring to is Rupert Sheldrake, the biologist that we've been listening to in previous segments of this series.
These cannot be accounted for by genetics. He says that there's another factor besides nature and nurture. The third factor being resonance. That's what it's classically been called. The idea that in time-space, there are forms of every, let's say, piece of matter in the universe. There are forms that are formed in time-space. And those forms are what shape your body and mind, and that nature is habitual. That's why we have the shapes and forms that are uniform, rather than some of us having 4 arms or having 3 kidneys or whatever. And that within the form or the field for your whole self are a myriad of nested fields for the various processes in your body. Each organ, for instance, has a field. Each cell type has a field. Your brain has a field, and the parts in the brain have a field. And that, in fact, your brain does not hold any memories. It's a receiver for the rest of your body, and there's no controller in your brain. Now, that's just science. That's just fact. There's no controlling entity or organ in your brain. And that your memories, let's just say your wits, are stored, as is the rest of you, in the morphic field that's appropriate. So, we who believe that our intelligence and our memories are going to continue on after death, and we believe that our memories are stored in our brains, we're going to find ourselves in bad shape when our brain is dead and the memories therein are gone. So he's theorizing, in fact, he's actually factorializing this particular aspect of it as a biologist, that the memories are not stored in your brain, in your cerebral cortex. And he has some hard evidence on this. As I mentioned last time, Ibn Alexander, again, to bring this up, a brain surgeon, caught a rare form of meningitis that went from his spinal cord into his brain, that is bacterial meningitis, that ate off his cortex, that ate off his entire gray matter, his cerebrum, all gone, and left in its place the waste products of the bacteria, pus, that ate his brain off down to the cerebellum. Thus, if his memories are stored in there, they're all gone. But through some miracle, maybe just a miracle so we would know that there was something more, this cerebral cortex grew back completely. And so did his memories come back. And so did his wits, and so did his ability to do brain surgery. And as a result, he had an experience, which is impossible for him to have an experience with no cortex. But he had a long, near-death, I would say past-death experience, because he was dead. He was brain dead. His heart was beating, that's all, when this started to grow back. Go look at his book. It's called Heaven is Real. The guy was an atheist. Heaven is real. In fact, if you go out to jspresents.org, we have a review of that book that we did here last year. Lisa Morissette did it. It's very good. She tells all about what's in that book. And so here's some hard evidence. How could his thinking, how could his training, how could his memories, how could his recognition of his family come back when he has no cerebral cortex, when his head's full of pus, when all that's left is a primitive brain? And then new tissue comes on there, and his memories come back. Where do they come from? Well, if Sheldrake is right, and now the little minority of scientists that are seeing this, they came out of the morphic field. And if you die, and you're not one of those people that are a white bull that Yahshua talks about in John 5 that don't die, then how will you get your memory back? By some miracle? Even blowing the breath of life on the genetic library won't get you that back. It's got to be somewhere else. This is really the fly in the ointment of the Christian idea of heaven. Because Paul tells us we are born spiritually dead. There's no spirit there. Why is that? Because there are two creations. There's a spiritless man, and the second man is the spirited man. And then we see through the animal apocalypse, if we look deeper than just the story there, we see that certain white bulls, that is, those who have the, let's say the morphic resonance, similar to the atom that was inbreathed with spirit, they pop up here and again in families. They pop up with Shem. They pop up with Seth. In fact, if all of them were killed off during the flood, we've got Shem left over that survives the flood. Now, we know that there are a lot of Nephilim that survived the flood, but we know of at least one that was of the white bull class, that was of the Adamic race that survived the flood. And he was the father of the Shemites, the Semites. And if you got into your animal apocalypse any during the last few days, and you went any farther with it, you can see where the white bulls pop up. And not only do they go farther than becoming white bulls, they become man. And we might say glorified or exalted humankind. The point behind this is the animal apocalypse rolls itself out until almost the 1st century AD. Almost. If you go through the whole thing and you determine who's who there, and you can, it rolls out almost to the time of Messiah. And some, like the guy that does all the Apocrypha stuff, I don't know, he does a book 1, 2, and 3 Enoch altogether. I can't think of his name right now. But he rolls the animal apocalypse out right into the 1st century AD, and he identifies Yahshua and Yaakov and the other ones of the 1st century that came out as white bulls. Now, we expect Lumpkin, sure, Lumpkin. And what that gives us for the animal apocalypse is a date when that thing was written.
An apocalypse is not prophecy. An apocalypse is telling the past or the present in such a way, in semi-prophetic or symbolic language, so people that understand that kind of language can read the history of their time. I think I got up to about the 70, the first Sanhedrin, and I thought, why go on after that? If it goes up to Messiah, then what we've got to say is the book was written in the 1st century AD, that part of it. We know that in Enoch, the similitudes or the parables of Enoch, that talk about the Son of Man, they were surely written in the 1st century AD. So parts of that are written in the 1st century, and we wonder why we don't find the similitudes in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, the reason is because they were too late to get into the Dead Sea Scrolls. What I'm saying is there's a mapping out here of people that have an inborn propensity to be spiritual, an inborn opportunity or opening for the breath of life, the Ruach. Within that idea, we find both predestinarianism and we find free will. Because we find predestinarianism, because obviously through an apocalypse like the animal apocalypse, we see that Elohim had this in his mind all along. He tells, like Jeremiah, I formed you in the womb. Here we have that word form again, which, of course, if we look in the Septuagint, that's going to be morphology, the forming in the womb. We hear that the same thing went for Moses, who was a white bull, and for Abraham, who was a white bull. And we see it going clear up, as you say, to Messiah. And if Messiah's in there, he's a white bull, and so is his family. And you see a bloodline in Messiah that comes both from King David, who was a white bull, and Zadok the priest. So that family is so blessed in Messiah that they all had to die under terrible situation because they were too good for this world. Now, there's been 2,000 years from the animal apocalypse. We know angels have fallen since then, and they've copulated and they've had offspring that are Nephilim, Gibborim. We know they're mixed up in the mess here. We've got a lot of people nowadays talking about the Nibiru. Nibiru? Yeah.
Planet? Yeah, Planet X.
Well, we're thinking about the Anakim, the Emim, the Zanzumim that are talked about in Numbers 13, the lizard people. Certainly at the top of the heap, we have some dead bodies in our governments that are totally filled with an occult demonic possession that simply carries around that dead flesh and does what it does. But look, how is it that we come to Messiah? You can tell the good from the bad. There's the shepherd in there, the good shepherd, who I suppose, I don't even know who it is anymore. It's been a while since I looked at it. What I'm saying is there is still a remnant of Shem in the blood supply. Or I should say, in morphic fields, in the morphic field supply. I don't know if this is a fact or not. It's just what it seems to be coming to. Why is it me and not my father, say?
Well, beloved, we have to take a little break now. We'll be back when it's finished, promise. Just as I promised, Jackson Snyder Present is back now to finish up message and fulfill promise.
Why is it me and not my sibling? Why is it I am so interested in the things of the Spirit, or of the Scripture, or of Elohim, or so feeling beloved by the Father, and the person next door to me has no feeling for it all, is completely wrapped up in the bowling league, or completely wrapped up in lap dances, for that matter, or completely wrapped up in pornography, or completely wrapped up in business. NASCAR, definitely. Why is that? We should be more similar than that. Morphic fields explains that. Genetics can't explain it because, as I said, genetics does not address a person's form or his thought or his predilection. This is what scientists, biologists say anyway. I was always taught. I was a genetics major with physiological psychology. We were taught 80 to 90% of everything we are, of our shape and the way we look, is because of the genes that we inherit down the line. But good night when you have something like someone come along like Eben Alexander, a man that not only had near-death experience, but he died and came back from death. He lost his brains completely, and he comes back. That's a pretty convincing thing. It never happened before. It's not known to have happened. The book is easy to read, very interesting. You can't put it down. It's short. Or just go out and listen to Lisa's, because Lisa does a great job of hitting just about every high point in the book. All right, I'm not going to hit that anymore. All I can say, it's an extremely interesting possibility and at least a model of an alternative thinking that meshes with our spirituality and our understanding of afterlife and our understanding of resurrection and where that resurrection's coming from, and an understanding of election. In Enoch also, there are certain classes of people. There are, in the top class, the Bakar, that's the chosen one, Messiah. There are the Bakarim, those that are chosen to not die but to live forever in the realm of the Messiah in order to subdue and rule the earth with him. Then there are the Zadokim. Those are the good people that primarily keep Torah, and they live good lives, even if they never heard of the Torah or Jesus or anybody else. If they live a good life, according to John 5, then they're going to be adjudicated to have life in the millennium. And then there are the Kataim, those that are just plain sinners. They have their free will choice. They have a body fit for good, but they do wrong, and they act wrong, and they choose to when they know better. That even goes for sociopaths and psychopaths. They don't have to do wrong. A lot of psychopaths do right, and they excel at right doing when they need to. So, look, it's almost a perfect representative of the heavenlies. Now, Sheldrake, I told you, had a religious experience through this that took him from being a confirmed atheist all his life to being a believer in Yahweh and the Messiah. He's a believer. And where he went from there was to try to find some kind of resonance for his theories concerning morphic resonance. And one of the theories one of the ideas that he came up with that I was listening today with him in interview with somebody about spirituality was the hierarchy of angels. You know, at the top we have a hierarchy of heavens, a seventh heaven. We have 4 angels there, covering angels. They call them archangels. And there are other ones, thrones, seraphim, cherubim, choirs. There are 9 different types of angels according to the ancient lore. And these angels have to do also with a hierarchy of spirituality. Remember, Yahshua says that those in the resurrection, and he's talking about the first resurrection, not the rest of them. He's talking about the Bakarim. They're like the angels in heaven. So what we're looking forward to as the chosen race, as those who respond and are chosen and choose, and I think that's us or we wouldn't be here, is that we are bound to be an angelic kind of creature because we have within our morphic form that same Ruach Kai that Adam had and lost because of his disobedience. He wasn't the same kind of man as the first bunch. He was an exalted, glorified man. You remember his eyes were only open after he ate the fruit. He was different. He was given the spirit or wind or breath of life. This is not just made alive. The rest of those guys didn't get anything like that. They were manufactured like they came out of a factory. Male and female created, epoiesin, made him go out. Well, the word is epoiesin. He made him. The problem is with that. You are reading an English text. I read you the Greek text last time. The Greek text that came from 250 BC. The best text we have and the most descriptive text that we have. And we can see in the original languages, or the Greek language, I should say, behind the English, it's completely different. Yet these English translators have again glossed that over, mistranslated it on purpose. And when I read to you Josh McDowell's website, he says the same thing. Yet he comes up with the conclusion, being himself an evangelical Christian that sells books and is sold out to the system. He says, well, this is an absolutely radical idea that there could be two. He knows as well as I do that there are two. Of course, you can use the Brenton translation, but you still need an interlinear Brenton. You don't have to know the language. You just go in there and see where it says he made them male and female. Look and see what the word is there, and then go over to the second chapter and see what the word is there when he formed from the dust of the earth the men. You won't find the men in first chapter. That's one man. He clears off land for the man. He builds a garden there. He walks with the man. He builds the man, forms the man a woman, cloned out of his own flesh. And then, after some period of time, he takes them out of the garden and they have children. Here's Cain. Where does Cain find his wife? In the land of Nod, among these other Homo sapiens, or whatever they were. They're the same species, but they're not the same family. I just don't know how to make that clearer. And it's not a matter of faith. It's a matter of reading the text right. And I am sorry you have been deceived with the creation stories. You've been deceived. Who are you going to blame for that? You should blame your teachers. You should blame the pastors. Because these guys are wolves in sheep's clothing, and they need to reform because they are a boys' club for the most part. I know there are a lot of unlearned, ignorant pastors that are doing the best they can with what little they have. But there are a lot of educated men that know. They know about their Hebrew roots. They know the name of Yahweh. They know the name of Yeshua. They know the falsehood of the Trinity. They know there's no such thing as a rapture. Get in the language and find out. They know these things, but they keep teaching them because they do not want to upset the status quo. They've got too much at stake. Ask your pastor how much you have in your mutual fund account. How much is the denomination putting in there for you? How much money are you making? What is the size of your parsonage? And what's in there? What's provided for you? A car. Do you get a car? Do you get a housing allowance? Do you have to pay any taxes at all? Probably not. Ask them.
You get the accolades and the respect.
Oh, let's not forget that, brother.
It's
respect.
It's there.
You get to wear the collar.
Exactly.
The flashy suit.
You you get to be somebody. If you didn't do those things, they wouldn't, fawn over you, kind of thing.
There are a lot of
understand it.
pastors
I understand.
that need attention.
I was
All
the
right.
commander.
You're the commander.
I was a 4 Ranger commander going up the ladder.
I was Reverend Dr. Snyder with his collar on.
Once I went into this walk and it ruffled a few feathers as I was out.
All right. You guys that have a job on there, go to your job. Wear yourself a kippah, a katan, nice long tzitzit, and see how long you last. All right, I'm going to go into the end of this. Going to see where I am here. I just want to decode a little bit of Paul. No, I don't like Paul's soteriology or the fact that he was a Roman agent and an agent for the Herodians and all that stuff. But Paul was a genius, a theological genius. And I have gone against my own rule at times using Paul in such a way as to destroy the text rather than to enhance the text. And I did this today in Ephesians 2. I thought today, where can I find some text that backs this up? So what I did, I'm not in the habit of doing, but I do once in a while when I feel anointed to do it. I take a pencil and I go to Paul and I begin, you know how wordy he is. In fact, the first chapter of Colossians is all one sentence. I begin to cross out words. And I did this today in Ephesians 2, 3 through 10. And here's what I got. We were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. What others? We're looking at this from a viewpoint of the creation. Yes, we were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. He doesn't say who the others are. In this context that we're speaking, this is as though this is a word of prophecy coming forth. The others, speaking of the other creation. But he made us alive, the inspiration of the Ruach Chai. He made us alive and raised us together, making us sit, think of it this way, making our situation, you know what the next words are, let's substitute for the next words, space. But he makes us alive and raises us together and makes us situated in space. Well, what does heavenly mean? The word places is not in the text. Look at your King James Version. Places is in italics. In the heavenlies, what's the word behind that? The word behind that is sky. Uranos. I said that these second created people, Adam and Eve, were homo uranos. And in Paul, right here, he made us alive, raised us together, making us situated in Uranos, in space, in the sky. It doesn't say heavenly there. We get the idea somewhere up in heaven with angels and stuff. Angels were playing their harps and people sitting around the throne praising. That's not what it says. Think sky, think space. That in future ages he might demonstrate exceeding riches, for we are his workmanship. Can you get the idea of forming? The word behind that again is oikodomeo. He has constructed the economy, which is us. Oikos, economy, domeo, constructed a home. He has made us and formed us beforehand. Made us for good, formed us for good, prepared us beforehand, creating one new man of the two. I'm sorry to be yelling. I'm excited about this. Making peace, that both men might be eventually reconciled through one pneuma ruach, one spirit. That is awesome. That is awesome. It comes out like a prophetic word. Now listen to the rest. Just a little bit more, and I'm done. You are not strangers or foreigners, but fellow citizens with the set-apart ones and other members of the economy of Elohim. Why? Because we have survived. We have come into the Bakarim, the chosen place, and we've chosen that. We have been fortunate to have been prepared beforehand and known beforehand for having that Adamic inbreathed spirit in our morphology, and yet at the same time having been put into this world of evil with the other men, with the Gibberim, with the sociopath, with the rapist, with the anarchist, with the atheist, yet we've responded to that which has been in the morphology since the foundation of the world. Now, what this requires is thought. You guys put me into this mode. I go to the books to study. And then I go to the throne room to get something there. And I come down here, it's my job as a pastoral minister to bring something from the throne room. Not something from Kenneth Copeland or Rod Parsley, but from the throne room. And there's never been a time when Father hasn't been faithful in this. And it's not just knowledge that we're trying to gain here, but we have to have an understanding if we're going to go forth in this 7th millennial mission. We are on a parallel course with those first apostles and prophets. We're on a parallel course right now. We've got to take up our parable. We've got to take up our little sword. We've got to take up the word. We've got to take up the prophetic gift. We've got to take up the boldness to go forth. Why? Because those that are supposed to do that have not chosen. We're going to be Bakarim. We are going to be spiritual, powerful individuals like the angels. And those folks sitting on the pew, yes, they're going to make it in the resurrection. But they've got a lot of learning to do. But we're going to teach them. We're going to teach them. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Now with that great diatribe, we're going to go into yet another new genre never really heard of before. That is quantum love poetry. Whereas if all are really one, and matter is really just a fluid plane of waves, then why can't we get together if we are one? Yes, we have quantum love poetry now, perhaps only quantum love poem in existence. I hope you enjoy it now that you know something about morphic resonance and the quantum state.
Minds of mortal genius promise us that all is one. The oneness of the cosmos is more fluid than the sea. Base matter, seeming solid, mostly empty space, undone. As God, the great Echad with sentience, dwells in unity. Scientists and spiritualists are breathing common air. Now all is one, and God is one, not I and thou, but we, and we are in the one, attached somehow, yet here and there, part of us here, part there, you here, me there, or you and me. This latter proposition, minds, I beg you to explain. Part of us here, part there, me here, you there, and me and you. The me and you and me in this vast fluid plane, especially the we of you and me, sirs, if it's true, then why cannot I feel her hand?
she mine? If all is one, why can't I taste her tear or sense her nearness if we're one? If subatomic continuity proves two is one, why can't she touch my brow and I her lips if we are one? The Depravity of Subatomic Continuity, a poem of love and desperation by Jackson Snyder.
Obviously, as in the days after Copernicus, we are going to have to begin to change our minds about reality, spirituality, theology, and common living, and begin, as the Bakarim, the elect, to think more on a cosmic, quantum plane, in order to prepare our hearts and minds for that duty that is before us in this upcoming change of everything. Those that aren't prepared in this life will not be fit ministers in the next. They will be the ones to receive the ministry of education, of reformation, and in some cases, of adjudication and condemnation. Are we going off track? Are we going into the New Age thought? No, we are not. But we are pioneering a new and futuristic way that we will eventually realize as the only way in which we can aid in the justification of world humanity, no matter what creation or combination the individual members of this humanity come from, and thus, through this program of re-education, revitalization, and renewal, learn war no more, heal growing creation, fulfill the great cosmic covenant, and be change agents in the quest to turn over a perfected world to the Almighty Father on the 8th day, a new world from a world without end. Amen.
You have been experiencing Jackson Snyder Presents on the Hebrew Nation radio station. Join us again tomorrow for another exciting revelation of the biblical, historical faith. Historical faith. Historical faith. Historical faith.